I call to order the hearing of a variance request for a zoning compliance permit application for a retaining wall at 371 Henry Clay Street, Harper's Ferry. It is a variance from the Article 1303.03C2D, which means the features of the retaining wall are not sufficiently similar to an exterior architectural feature explicitly listed in the ordinance. I am Chairman Dave Simmons. We also have present Secretary Lynn Pechakonis. I'm trying to remember who our vice chair is. I believe Ed Wheelis is our vice chair, and Chad Godier. So the applicant couldn't make it to the hearing. If we do have questions, we may call the applicant during the hearing. So I'll open it to the members of the board if they have any comments or discussion they want to start on the application for the variance.
What was cited for the
Article?
Yep.
1303.03C.
Say again.
1303.03 C, and then item 2, sorry, and sub item D. So it's going to be 1303.03 C.
03 C.
Where's C? You're missing C. What is C?
C is punched right there.
Punched out right here.
Okay.
2D.
D.
Right, I see that.
Okay, so that is the reason we are having the variance. The variance is needed.
I guess my question wasn't that, but where in our zoning ordinance does it say that
The appendix A.
it's not listed as a permissible feature?
Yep.
In the appendix A, page 20 and 21, for fences and walls.
Okay. I saw that, but this is a retaining wall versus a fence, if you look at the definition.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no restriction placed on retaining walls. It says other than that they can't be made of concrete block that is unparged, but the applicant is proposing to parge it.
Yeah.
Put a stucco finish.
Right. Right. So it also says retaining walls shall be constructed of materials that are compatible with the associated building and its context in the neighborhood. So that's the other piece, I think, to that. It's worthy of a discussion. I mean, we should discuss that. Yeah, that's worth talking about.
HLC says here, use as much original material as possible, with blue shale stone being, so the original application was block, harsh block.
No, it's stacked stone. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, those shale stones stacked up. So, and they're recommending not using manufactured stone or concrete blocks. So the question is, the applicant wants to use the concrete block but parge it, right? And so Ed, your argument is that may be allowed by the appendix A. What's your thought?
Yes.
Since it's parched.
Yes, and I think parging is a common treatment on foundations and other structures in town.
There's also, I looked up the contributing structure list too, and the wall isn't explicitly called out for this property. It's just the building. And there's confusion. I remember talking with some members of the HLC that they thought the whole property was contributing, right? I talked about Juan Velez's property where there were two buildings there. One was a contributing structure and one was not, and they were able to take that one down, if you remember when they built their garage. But anyway, that's for context for you guys. I think you have to, it has to be named inside that listing.
Right.
Contributing structures.
It's just the house itself.
Yeah, so the wall isn't in there. But the wall does sort of match the foundation of the house in a lot of ways. Like it's got the stacked stone work.
But it does have a stucco finish, so
Mhm.
I think that is compatible.
Does the foundation have a stucco finish?
I don't know, it says the house itself, I don't recall, stone foundation.
Yeah.
Part of the porch and the end of the house is blocked too, but that was added on there.
Mm-hmm.
But it is large.
So this letter from HLC will become part of the file, part of the record, and I think we kind of have a decision to make basically, and we can, if we want to have further discussions with HLC, I suppose we can do a continuance of our hearing here today, but I think it's either we go by the recommendation of the HLC or we take the reading of the retaining walls section of Appendix A and decide if that applies here.
So I didn't copy the page about retaining walls, I missed that, but is there a height maximum on retaining walls as there is for?
I think it's defined as 3 feet in the definition.
You know, there's another additional standard in that it says additional standards for historic resources. Retaining walls which are contributing structures in their own right or are associated with a contributing structure shall be preserved or maintained wherever possible. So that's pretty strong wording too. So bottom of that page and top of that one.
Shall I? Oh, it's 18 inches, sorry. A wall or a retaining wall is a wall or terraced combination of walls used principally to retain more than 18 inches, more than 18 inches of material and is not used to support, provide a foundation for, or provide a wall for a structure.
It's okay that it's going up to 5 feet because it's not.
I think it would just, there's so many properties with the steep slope, right? I feel like that's,
Okay.
the restriction is not there. I would agree with that.
Yeah, because it was like 4 feet on the fence and wall section, but
Yeah.
for retaining walls, it's different. Okay.
Yeah.
So would preserving the existing wall deny them the opportunity to park? Because it is too far, sits too far forward.
I think Kevin has his hand up. Okay, thanks.
The applicant is on. Did you hear me?
Now,
Go ahead.
The applicant is on here right now.
Oh, okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay.
Is she in the waiting room?
She said she's on, but you can't see her.
Okay,
We can let her in.
yeah, Melissa, you may need to let the applicant in, and someone might be in the waiting room of the Zoom call. Thanks, Kevin.
Yes.
So Ed, say that again, sorry, you're talking about,
Oh, if
they can't park.
if our primary focus is not altering the existing retaining wall, which is in poor condition when I looked at it, denying them the right to encroach further into the property with that wall, would also alter the existing historic placement
Of the
of the
wall,
wall.
yeah. I don't think we're denying, like, I think it's a matter of, they've been approved to create that parking space through the planning commission. So they're allowed to build that parking space. It's a matter of that retaining wall that they're taking down. In order to do that, a recommendation from Historic Landmarks is to, use those materials as much as you can or find similar materials, not to do block and parge.
Suzanne was added, but it's still saying she's muted.
Okay.
That's on her.
Okay. Hi, Suzanne, we're here, and you can unmute if you want, and there's a feature to raise your hand, and we'll try to pay attention if you have any comments.
Okay, great, thank you.
And usually we start these hearings with the applicant just telling us about the project, so if you want to do that, go ahead. We've been talking for a while, but you can give us a feel for what you're trying to do. I think it's pretty straightforward, but give us the flavor if you'd like.
Yeah, thanks. I've been here, so I've been also listening to your deliberations. I think, overall, really just trying to get some better parking on Henry Clay, and specifically space for 2 cars that's, on or close to the property. Because right now the only parking it's not even really like parking spaces. They're like pullouts that you can squeeze a car into, but it's really muddy and they're not maintained. And so that's where I've been parking. And I guess, it's hard. I appreciate the Historic Landmarks Commission recommendation. And if I could afford a stone dry stack wall, which is about $30,000, I would. But I can't, right? That's not in my budget. It's not, I think it's an undue hardship. But I would be, willing to just keep parking where I'm not withdrawing this application, but I am, maybe going to explore just continuing to park where I have been parking and maybe working with the city to make those like better parking spaces, because other residents along Henry Clay also struggle with parking, right? Especially if there are 2 residents and there's like 1 parking space. So I don't know, it's hard. Like that house looks good with that dry stack wall without a parking space. That said, like the reality is I need to be able to park 2 or 3 cars there. And right now that parking doesn't exist. Right. So this is the solution that I have control over, or the most control over, and that's what brings me to you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So any other further discussion from everyone here, or anyone want to raise a motion, propose a motion? So let's go through it. The variance, we should actually talk about this. So variances shall be granted. There are 4 conditions, right? So in Article 1326. So it's 1326.04 and then B. So it's on page, well, it's not page number. So 13.26.04B, it says the Board of Zoning Appeals shall approve a requested variance if the following criteria are satisfied. The approval of the variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, or the rights of the abutting property owners or residents. The request for the variance arises from special conditions or attributes which pertain to the property and were not created by the person requesting the variance. 3, the approval of the variance will eliminate an unnecessary hardship and permit a reasonable use of the land. And 4, the approval, and it's key that it says and, so it's all 4, it's not or. The approval of the variance will allow the intent of the zoning ordinance to be observed and substantial justice done. So that's the 4. I can.
Planning had no other comments other than approval, correct? Have we seen anything about that?
Yeah, because their job is just say, can you or can't you do something on the public right of way, on the town's property?
Mhm.
That's kind of their role, I see. Their role isn't, I don't think, on the, I guess they could ask historic landmarks for a recommendation as to whether or not it makes sense, but they didn't, I don't believe, because they thought it was coming to us and we were going to be doing that, so I suppose they could. So,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve as submitted.
I'll second.
further discussion?
I still have concerns that, you know, HLC has made this request and it's not, it could be replaced as something closer to the current wall.
Yeah,
And it's visible from Washington Street and
yeah, I kind of, I'm of the same opinion a little bit, and I hate to put the burden on the property owner, but it's this was a known situation there. I mean, is this, who used to live here? Is this McLaughlin's?
McLaughlin's, yes.
Yeah, so they lived there for years without the parking spaces, and I don't know if they've had problems, but
One of my main reasons is it does match the materials used on the house. That large block, and if it didn't exist, then I would certainly have a problem. My attitude towards it would be a little different, but
Mhm.
and I understand parking is a premium in town. It's nice to be able to park in front of your house, and I know that lots of others do it. This is an issue of materials, not whether they can or cannot park there.
Yeah, I feel that any history or historical integrity to the wall is going to be, the existing wall is going to be lost when we excavate for the parking spaces. So I think that we're not preserving anything. And I think that the block wall I think the parging is a nice treatment to bring it into alignment with our standards and guidelines, which speak of concrete block walls that are unparged, which implies that a parged concrete block wall is okay. And I don't, and while the landmarks recommendation would be a nice to have, I think it's just that it's I don't think it's like I said, we're not preserving a historic structure. That's being lost. We could reuse some of the materials, perhaps, but I don't think
Looking
we
at
should
that
regulate
block
on nice to haves.
in Appendix A where it says retaining walls associated with a contributing structure shall be preserved and maintained wherever possible.
But that, I mean, my point is, we're not,
yeah.
in any scenario, we're not preserving that wall.
But
You could rebuild a new wall from the same materials, but it's not.
I think we're
gonna be-
mitigating the destruction of that wall too, if we were to ask for it to be built a certain way. In other words, planning didn't look at this probably, right? When they did their deliberation, we can maybe find that out, but would they have approved parking spaces knowing this?
I don't think it's their
That's not their purview.
bailiwick.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if we ask the applicant to provide us with the cost differential backup? Would that move a decision one way or another? If it was $30,000 wall versus a $5,000 wall, or I mean, what would be the threshold
Hasn't-
for?
She provided that. She said that it would be 30,000 for the dry laid, and this is estimated.
So this may not be relevant, but I'm just.
12,000.
I feel like that there's a contrast being made between the low end option and the highest end option, and not a consideration of creative alternatives. But that maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not ours to say. Yeah.
I mean, that goes to the hardship. I know it's a hard one, you know.
Well,
I
I
agree.
think it, one of the problems we've had historically, a long time ago, was landmarks and other bodies becoming like homeowners associations that, you know, we like the round windows rather than the square windows and stuff like that, that wasn't really grounded in historic preservation. It just, we thought it looked nice or something like that. And we got sued a few times over that. And so I want to be careful about going that route. You know, I mean, certain things should certainly be nice, but
I'm conflicted a little bit. At the current rate, I probably wouldn't vote to approve just because I'd like better backup for the hardship. Like if the hardship is cost, which it sounds like it is, I feel like we need some good information there, and maybe ask the applicant to provide that. If it's a substantial, if it's a substantial difference, I think it's worth considering the alternative, but and it's hard to get. It is hard to get estimates around here too, honestly, but that's for sure. So that's where I'm coming down. So the motion on table right now is to approve. It's been seconded. Any more discussion?
Yeah, question. So the reasons for a variance, I don't see any of those saying specifically because it doesn't meet historical standards. Is that included in this category that, like, it affects?
Yeah, it's not. This is our criteria for approving a variance.
Yeah.
So the reason we're seeing a variance right now is because of the architectural feature question. That doesn't land easily into what's in Appendix A. There's a gray area, and we're trying to resolve that right now, I think is what we're doing. That's
well,
how I see it.
I think a variance is not required because I think it conforms with the standards and guidelines and the zoning ordinance. And it in of itself is not a contributing structure, so that takes some of the weight off of it.
Mhm.
But you're basing everything on this, and
This being
I-
just so that you're pointing at it, I just want to make sure
Sorry.
these guys see it.
Yep.
The-
that retaining walls, which are not contributing structures, or associated with a contributing structure, but are not contributing themselves, shall be preserved and maintained wherever possible. And I think that is moot because the original wall is being taken out. So I don't think a variance is even necessary.
Which is a question for an attorney. So
I think you got a point there. It's not my preference for what should happen, but I think you're probably right.
Number 2, under retaining walls shall be constructed of materials that are compatible with the associated building, and that entire block is block construction. I would love to see a nice dry stack stone wall parking area. My motion is laid out based on that information alone right there. And I agree with Ed, looking at it further, that a variance request really isn't required.
So if we don't consider that we're preserving an existing wall, then if we're building a new wall from scratch, which
it's kind of
standards apply to that?
The same,
Okay.
which says that they shall be of unparged,
can't be.
strange wording, cannot be unparged
Yeah.
concrete block.
Yeah.
And must be of materials that are compatible with the associated building and its context. And I think the stucco treatment addresses that. Because it matches the house.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we shouldn't have scheduled this in the first place. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, as they say, everything's up for discussion. The issue being too is you're not, like Ed said, we're not preserving, we're removing what is very little left of a retaining wall, providing parking that they've requested, planning has approved.
Right.
The request is to match the materials that you see along that street.
And that matches the house. Yeah.
So what happens along the top of the wall, like
I
when
have that
it's done
same
like this?
question. Maybe we could ask Susanna. Susanna, I'm not sure if you can hear us well, but would the parging cover the top of the block wall as well?
Yeah, thanks. What I had proposed is to reuse some of the dry stack wall as capstone for the parged cinder block.
Okay, I missed that.
I don't think it's in the application. It was some more like a design feature that I discussed with the contractors.
I see.
So I'm thinking we need if we're gonna go down the path of no variance, we should withdraw the motion and then,
Would that motion be laid on the variance request, or can that just be a blanket motion?
Well, we can approve the zoning compliance permit, right?
right, but if there's no
Oh, you
variance,
rescind
we're
that
not the
and say-
proper authority anymore. So then it goes back to Kevin and Kevin can approve it. because we wouldn't be the proper authority.
I think we are still empowered to also be approving, but that could be done that way. I don't,
Well,
we could just advise Kevin that we found no,
We can tell him that's not a variance and lay out a reasoning for that. And then explain to him we don't, and give him the, give him the authority, so tell him he's the proper authority for the permit. That's how we hand it back to him. That feels like the cleanest approach. What do you guys think?
well, sometimes, I mean, Kevin can approve up to a point until discretion is required.
It's not in the rule. I don't think that's how the rule's written.
I think it is. He is administrative approval. If it's cut and dried in compliance with,
if he deems he is the proper.
and I claim that it is. So I think he is authorized.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But I think, if he has any question at all, he should kick it up to us. And I think at that point we have the authority to approve or return it, remand it to him. And
Is the issue of changing materials, removing what's there, changing materials, or requesting the new parged block wall substantial enough to request the variance? Is that still, you're changing materials?
I don't think it's the same wall.
But by virtue of changing that material, planning commission says, okay, you can push this back. You're no longer stacking that wall back using the same material. Now you're using a different material that doesn't exist. Or do we look at this as this falls under Kevin's purview? Should not have been a variance at all, and it could have been approved. I mean, he did the right thing still, pushing this through, because we're just, there's a lot of gray area here.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if this doesn't fall still under a variance because of the type of material used. You're switching from one to the other. I know they're not.
But you're
the
not
same
building
location.
the same wall. You're not like.
I know.
So you keep making this argument that we're not building the same wall. We're building a different wall. So therefore, it's goes under the retaining wall section, and it matches the features of the house, like you're saying.
Then at that point, I would say that Kevin could probably issue zoning compliance permit.
Right. And we can explain our rationale with how we deliberate, even though he's right there. But we better put it in writing. And we better not put it all on Lynn to make sure that we better all read it. So I'm going to suggest, this is what I'm going to suggest. See, again, open for discussion because I feel like we're in new territory, but you rescind your motion, and we have another motion to that indicates, is it a motion? Motion that we as the BZA feel there is not a variance here, and lay out the reason why, and we will give the permit approval authority back to the ordinance compliance officer. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
And we have to vote to rescind the motion, is that how that works?
I think he can just rescind his motion.
I'll rescind my motion.
Yeah. What do you guys think of that process?
Sounds fine with me.
Matt, do you?
Yes.
Do you want to make a motion?
So you have to rescind yours first.
I did. I rescind my motion.
Okay.
I'm opposed.
Just to add another little curve to the whole thing. All right. So I'll move that we send the application back to the OCO for approval as the BZA did not identify a variance in the materials proposed for the retaining wall.
I'll second that.
Did that cover it, you think? Maybe at the end say the retaining walls as described in Appendix A, maybe. Okay. So we have a second. Any more discussion on that? HLC is going to be mad at us, kind of, but all right. All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay.
Well, hopefully, perhaps in our letter to Kevin, we can lay out our rationale and then share that with HLC so they know.
Yep. We're a small town. I'm sure some of us know some of the HLC members very well. So, all right.
May get that.
I move that we adjourn the hearing.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.